We launched our MVP in September 2024. 2 months in, we realized that education on its own will not solve the problem because nobody wants to learn about money. Actually, a lot of people we asked were significantly avoiding learning about money. Like, I don't want to know. Life is becoming more difficult and it is becoming more urgent that we take control in order to secure the future.
If you lost everything and had to rebuild it from scratch, what's the first thing you would do?
Cry for a few days. Is that allowed? Like, yeah, I'd probably take a couple of days feeling sorry for myself and then back to the drawing board, I guess.
What did you learn out of curiosity?
I learned when not to go out of my depth. I learned where to draw the line between things I can learn, how to value what I can learn and what I shouldn't learn.
Hi everyone, my guest for this episode is a very interesting entrepreneur. She is a 3-time entrepreneur, innovator, and venture builder with a background in technology, in consulting, and digital media. She's currently working on Dija, which is a consumer fintech platform designed to help Arab women achieve financial independence and success. Previously, she co-founded SuperMama, a pioneering Arabic language parenting platform that reached over 5 million mothers monthly, and it was subsequently acquired by Mawdou' in 2019. Yasmine is an expert at Oxford Said Business School. She mentors and supports founders there. I'm excited to dive into her journey from launching and scaling startups to navigating exits and building impactful businesses.
Yasmine, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So I wanted to start off by talking about Dija. Dija is tackling financial education and it's targeting women in the Arab world. Could you tell me what prompted you to start this business?
So because we stopped on the name, let me make it clarify where it comes from. So for the Muslims hearing us, this stems from the name Khadija, from Khadija bint Khuwailid, the wife of the Prophet, because she is our role model when it comes to a woman who is savvy in finance and business. And why look elsewhere when we have someone we can look up to in our history? So the name stems from there. Dija stemmed from personal problems, in all honesty. I didn't grow up in a very financially savvy house. And when we exited and I had a bit of money, I didn't really have any clue what to do with it. I knew I needed to change something. I needed to invest. I needed to secure the future, but I didn't know how to start. Coincidentally, at the time, 2 of my closest friends, one had a bit of an inheritance and another had left her job with a severance pay. And I don't even remember who started the conversation, but someone said, what are we going to do with the money? And this was the first time in a female setting that money comes up as an investment decision, as opposed to maybe hair, nails, fashion, and beauty. And that conversation helped me so much going forward because it made me realize I am not alone. However, as I looked at the Arab world, or actually as I looked at women worldwide with specific focus on the Arab world, we were not very financially savvy. We don't talk about money. We're missing out on a lot of economic opportunities out there, putting us in a mindset of fear, mindset of scarcity. So we don't deal with money well. We don't think of our futures. But things are changing everywhere. We're now at the workplace. We're earning. We're spending. We're taking care of ourselves. We're paying our own taxes. And even in the Arab world, where the cultural norm is that still the woman is supported by her husband or her father, life is becoming more difficult and it is becoming more urgent that we take control in order to secure the future. So with the changes happening in the Middle East, it sounded like the right place to start. We did our focus groups, our interviews, and decided how to tackle the problem going forward.
How are you tackling the issues exactly? I understand that this is a platform that helps with financial education. Are you selling financial products as well? What kind of features do you have?
So we launched our MVP in September 2024, so 6 months now. 2 months in, we realized that education on its own will not solve the problem because nobody wants to learn about money. Actually, a lot of people we asked were significantly avoiding learning about money. Like, I don't want to know. It was one of those ostrich effects when you put your head in the sand. But we realized people will learn about money if you give them an incentive. And the incentive being economic empowerment and growth through investment. So what Dija is built to do, 3 things. Right now we have 2 of them. The 3 things are financial education in an easy to understand, short form, visual manner, not concrete courses, but rather something adopted from social media like carousels and short videos and so forth. Number two is the supportive community, a place which breaks taboos and breaks cultural issues, where women can ask and answer anonymously. Because, in our culture, in Arab culture, women, we don't want to talk about money with bringing the family name in. We're also aware of, the hasad, the evil eye. Don't want people to look into your money. So we realized that a lot of people would not talk about things if you knew who they were. So anonymous questions and answers are allowed. It's a growing community. We launched that in December, and now we're getting a new user every day, asking questions, answering others. And it's very inclusive. It's very supportive of you. And it's very encouraging. Someone would celebrate a milestone they reached. Someone paid all their debt. Someone made their first investment. So it's actually quite exciting. And then the third part, and that's the part we're working on building, coming live real soon, inshallah, is bringing in the investment opportunities from the local market to the app. So we're partnering with other fintechs in the consumer space, bringing in investment opportunities, whether in public market, private markets, private equity, from the different fintechs to our app, explicitly mentioning the source, the expected yield, expected duration, risk, and so forth, and helping the woman decide, or helping the user decide which opportunities are more fit to her, risk tolerance, goals, aims, and so forth.
Very interesting. There's a lot to unpack there. I think let's start off with MVP. You mentioned that you had an MVP. How did you know who to build for? Who was your ICP? Like, who's your ideal customer? What did they look like? And then how did you approach building the MVP for them?
That's a very cool question, because actually with us, there are a lot of lessons learned. We knew we wanted to target women, and after a lot of research, we knew that we wanted to start with Saudi Arabia. So within that two givens, we needed to select the exact target audience, or the ICP, that we're working with. We've done a lot of user interviews and surveys. We've done a lot of focus groups, and our preliminary estimation was that it's best to target them young. So work with women who just graduated university and are starting to build their career and their financial independence, and help them there. And everybody you interviewed said, yes, I want to be independent. I want to invest. I want to be strong. And I want to. However, reality has it that while users say something, they occasionally do another thing. And this was the case that we had. So only 1 month in, we realized that most of our users are actually in the later 20s or maybe even early 30s going upwards. Because when the psychology element of it, user, like the lady just graduates, gets her first job, feels a bit of independence. She has a lot of things she wants to buy. She wants to travel, change her car, buy the expensive bag, buy the expensive shoes. She's like so excited to spend that she honestly doesn't think about the future. It's like, you need to get it out of your system first. And then by the time they hit the late 20s, they're probably married, probably have children, maybe engaged to be married. They've reached the point in their career where they can see the future going forward, and they start to think of how to be secure and what's next. So these are the people that we realized that we're building for. So accordingly, we kind of made a minor pivot. So while the message is the same, the implementation is different. In the beginning, it was all the language and the design of the content was catering towards younger audience with shorter attention span. But now we know that our audience, they want to, instead of log on daily and spend 1 minute, they want to log on every week and spend 3 to 5 minutes. So we started adding other features that would engage that audience. And through data, we know that we're going in the right way or in the wrong way. I felt there was something else you asked in that question.
I just wanted to know, so you mentioned that part of your ICP are younger Arab women from the age of, I think, late 20s, early 30s.
Yeah.
Is there a reason why it's those people specifically and not maybe someone who's much older, for example?
That was a conscious decision. So women above 50 tend to be set in their ways, and their older children tend to get involved in their decision making. So you're not only working with the person, you're working with the person and her family. So that becomes a completely different story. We also intentionally focused on women and working women, not discounting or discarding non-working women, but we believe that this is the segment that we can best serve, and then spillover effect would add to non-working women as well. So at this point, we decided that our starting country is Saudi Arabia, and from there, potentially the rest of the Arab world, and from there, the rest of the Muslim world.
Okay. There are a lot of financial education and fintech platforms out there. How does Dija differentiate itself exactly from other consumer finance apps?
A number of things. First of all, the design for the audience. So there are a number of fintech apps, consumer fintech apps targeting women, but nothing is catering specifically to the Arab Muslim women in the Middle East. We have our own culture, our own religious norms, our own spending habits. The example I always give, the first thing they teach you in budgeting worldwide is the 50-30-20 rule. 50% of your salary goes towards your basic bills. So think rent or mortgage, utilities, car, transport, and so forth. Medical, maybe. Then 30% to your wants, and the 30% to your wants could be cinema, fun, travel, things that you want to do that make you happy, gym subscription, Netflix, maybe. And then 20% to the future you're saving, you're investing. But then talk to an Arab woman. The majority of Arab women are still supported by their husband or their father. So 50% of their salary is not dedicated to their bills. So you actually have 100% of your salary. How are you going to save that? And that's a very different problem than someone who is struggling to make ends meet. So you need to start from a different starting point. So we cater for that. Also bringing in the religious considerations. We are Sharia compliant in everything that we do. We have a Sharia board that reviews all our content and all our business deals so that everything is Sharia compliant. All the opportunities that will be on the app will be Sharia compliant, catering specifically for the women in the region. But also, we would be the only place that lists everything, not one thing. So any app that you would hop onto to invest, you'd find a little bit of education, maybe a question or two from the community, but then only those investment opportunities from that specific provider in that specific domain. So for example, private equities or sukuk or whatever. What we're trying to do is build this all into one place. And while it will seem like a lot, it is all catering to and focusing on one specific niche audience, which is women.
Okay, that's very interesting. I wanted to zoom into the 20% part that you mentioned, which is like the savings and the investing. Do you recommend investing in like the stock market? Do you recommend like diversifying, the typical like 75-25 balance? I mean, how do you manage that? And then also manage the fact that, as a Sharia compliant application with Sharia recommendations, how do you balance the fact that there are a lot of things that are just inaccessible from that standpoint?
So how do we make sure that anything that we have is Sharia compliant, and how do we cover the facts that things are not Sharia compliant? At the end of the day, we are not the provider of the opportunities. We are not the asset manager ourselves. So in a way, we are democratizing wealth management, not asset management. So I don't pick the opportunities. I source them from others, making sure that they have a Sharia certificate for everything that they have, that my board at that point approves. So that's one thing. Now, the second thing is, do we have any specific recommendations? No, we don't. We are not authorized to give financial advice, but we give the tools and we provide the information based on the user's behavior that will allow her to take those decisions. For example, while I cannot tell you, Mohammed, for example, what your risk tolerance is, I can have you answer a very elaborate quiz that tells you your potential answer and shows you a subset of opportunities based on that selected answer. And as you change your answers, opportunities will change. So while I can guide you, I cannot explicitly advise you at this point.
You're building a very mission-driven business, it seems. How do you balance impact and financial sustainability? How are you trying to democratize financial education for Arab women? But in the same time, how do you monetize from this?
And I think this is a very interesting point to talk about, because very early on we realized that the majority of people that attempted to work in the education space, financial education, as an edtech, didn't manage monetization and didn't work. And this is why we wanted to classify ourselves and focus on fintech, so transaction-based. Hence, our business model is still most of the education elements are always free. And the way we make money is through premium content and AI-guided tools, and through a percent of management fee shared with the opportunity owner of the transaction. So this way, we still give the education for free for anyone who's seeking it. And that would be also highlighted and exaggerated perhaps by our social media efforts and in-person trainings and all that. But our money is made from those who are able to make the next step and get into investment, which we're encouraging, to be honest, because we believe that this is the way to go.
Okay. And the content, is it solely within the app, or do you also have, let's say, like YouTube channels?
So right now it's within the app. We have our Instagram account, which has some of the content, but as teasers, to be honest. We're exploring different things like webinars, seminars. We've done a number of in-person trainings. We are working with some organizations providing their employees with trainings as well. And we're considering a podcast. So maybe when we're done, I'll ask you for tips.
I'm sure you guys will manage and you'll do pretty well. In terms of outreach, how do you reach your customers? How have you acquired your first set of customers?
Our first set of customers, our first launch was actually through friends of friends. So just to get basic insights of the app. Then we've also had in parallel built our Instagram channel to get a few committed users. At this point, we're not yet spending on digital acquisition. Again, as MVP, we still have a lot of things to tighten and make better before we're happy to spend. But also we believe that it's a mix of three things. So digital channels for user acquisition, working with influencer, content marketing, online ads, and so forth. So one direction. The second direction is through in-person. Again, in the region we're working, it's a very trust-based region. So people need to put a face and be able to find you somewhere to build trust, especially when it comes to money. So in-person trainings and webinars, maybe a booth in some event or something like that. We have not yet done the booth, but we've done in-person and we've done webinars. And then the last thing is after MVP, once we're comfortable, once we're happy to push forward, we want to start thinking of B2B2C. So working with organization to provide like a bulk subscription and trainings to their female employees as part of a perk with HR. We're sensing a lot of positive vibes in that sense so right now we're doing a few tests for free. We have one next Monday, for example, one of the tech organization in Riyadh, where we're providing a webinar introduction to 101 money. So we'll see how that goes and how we can build on that to prove that that kind of business model works as well.
This is a very content heavy kind of business, and there's a lot of knowledge that you're trying to transfer from yourself and from your organization to the consumers. How did you go about learning what you needed to learn about personal finance and finance related subjects before being able to build this application?
It's a very cool question. So I built SuperMama without being a mother, and I'm building Dija without being a finance expert because I believe in the power of research and experts. Personally, before even I started Dija, I took a course in Islamic finance and I took a course in personal finance just to understand what's going on for personal use, honestly. And I think this is part of the reason what inspired me to go for it, because I couldn't find anything similar targeting the people that we're targeting. People like myself. Like when I took the Islamic finance course, I wasn't planning to do it professionally. And I felt that everybody in that course wanted to become a Sharia scholar in some sort of way. So a lot of the material was too heavy for me as a consumer. So I have a research team that researches and documents and writes content in a form that is appropriate for the users. We have a Sharia board that reviews the content. We have financial analysts that write financial news and market news in a way that is very relevant to the users. So for example, if you talk about why Bitcoin hit 100K or something, then we'd analyze it in a way that makes it like understandable. So what does this even mean? And what's in it for me? What do I do with this piece of information? And these are questions that I personally ask when I read The Economist and I don't understand. So like, what do I do with this as a non-financial person? And a lot of the content that we're creating, so a lot of the webinars that we're working on and so forth are actually prepared by experts in different fields. So we have investment experts, hedge fund experts. We have VCs coming in to talk about VCs and angel investing. We're bringing in different experts, trying our best to have them all female, which is a challenge because of the scarcity of female experts in the region. But it's a nice problem to have.
Okay, no, that's great. I want to kind of change topic a little bit and talk about your earlier experiences in your career and your earlier entrepreneurial experience. You have a very diverse set of educational experiences and professional experiences. Could you tell me what prompted you to study computer science in the first place, and then what prompted you to move into interactive media, and then what prompted you to get an MBA from LBS?
Okay, some of those answers will sound stupid. I'll be honest, and whether people like it or not, that's the way it is. So I actually studied computer science by elimination. So I didn't want to be a doctor or an engineer. or study politics. So I looked for something that wasn't too long to study. So in Egypt, computer science, my degree was 4 years, not 5, and where there is a benefit in being bilingual. So again, most of the education in this sector was in English and potentially has a high employability rate. And I thought, you know what, I know computers, it should be fine. So that's how I ended up studying computer science. Whether I was good or not is controversial, but I did meet my co-founder, who is the CTO, who is an amazing technology person at uni. So I must have done something right there. Why did I study interactive multimedia? Because I knew I did not want to become a software developer. While I liked everything around technology, I didn't want to be a coder in a sense. So interactive multimedia back then was a very ambiguous term. But it is what it is today. Like everything now is interactive multimedia. Back then in 2003, it was random. And I specialized in something called human-computer interaction, which later evolved to be the science of UX UI, so user experience and user interface design. So it made me realize I wanted to be closer to the people, to the users. And I think, and from there, I took on the whole user-centric design, and which is why innovation appealed to me, because of innovation, you put the user at your heart and you start from there. So I think it all just made sense going backward, but back then it felt like the right thing to do. From there, why EMBA at LBS? So I think 2014, I was already leading SuperMama. I was doing my financial sheets. The balance sheet never balanced. Financial statements were a nightmare. I always literally cried tears when I was doing them end of the year. And it was working very well. Everything was amazing. We were selling ads like crazy. And then at some point things stopped. And I couldn't understand why. And then I was later told that because there are external factors stopping goods from coming to Egypt, so the multinationals who are importing those goods are now struggling and paying extra money to get them outside of the customs. So they're cutting their advertising budget. And again, at that point, 2014, the first cut to the advertising budget would happen to the digital budget, not the offline budget. So that's why it hit me. Now, that's pure economics, causal effects. And at that point, it just didn't occur to me. I didn't get it. And there was a low point in my life where I said, you know what, I'm a very methodological person. If I want to understand what's happening, I need to study for a degree. Otherwise, it's not going to happen. So what is the best degree? MBA. Can I commit to full-time? No. So it's EMBA. So I have to do it while working. Can I travel too much? No. Because again, I have a company to run. My company was based in Cairo, between Cairo and Dubai. Who has a campus in Dubai? London Business School. Amazing reputation. Went for it. Didn't apply anywhere else.
So you did the executive MBA in the Dubai campus?
In the Dubai campus, yes.
Okay, amazing. Before all of that, I think you had work experience after you graduated from your computer science degree. What prompted you to make the jump into entrepreneurship?
Before entrepreneurship, I worked for a startup that collapsed with the financial crisis. And I took my team and we worked for one of our clients. So basically the team that was working on the project, we went and worked at the client. And it was a very toxic environment. While the startup, it was a very nice environment. Like there was a lot of team building. There were a lot of personal development that you face as a mid-level candidate at a startup, because you get to do a lot of decisions that you don't get to do them in a corporate setting. And I couldn't find any job that I liked after. So we built it. Yeah, we built it.
That's it seems like there's a trend with entrepreneurs. They're looking for something specific, either a problem to solve in the market or a job that they want to build for themselves, and they just go and do it. There's a misconception about tech founders. Most people think that tech founders graduate from university or even drop out and then start a technology firm. But I think based on the data, most founders actually don't do that. A lot of them actually even have postgraduate degrees. A lot of them have work experience. Do you recommend getting work experience before attempting entrepreneurship?
So I've met in my social circle and friends circle, both in the UK and in Amina, I've met all sorts of founders, and I've seen those who have done well out of uni and those who have failed out of uni, and those who have done well after experience and those who have failed after experience. So I think there is no one size fits all to any problem. I have benefited from having experience before I jumped in. It gives you a bit of discipline. It gives you a bit of knowing what to say to who, especially when it comes to things that don't fall in your comfort zone. So for me, things like business development. If I had not wrote enough tenders and RFPs, I suspect I would have not been able to do a conversation of business development. However, maybe this falls naturally in somebody else's ballgame. I don't know. Personally, I benefited from having the experience. First for discipline, second for contacts, and third for knowing what to do.
Okay. That's very helpful and insightful. How did you get the idea for SuperMama, and just tell me about the story of how you transitioned from being like a 9 to 5 to an entrepreneur.
Okay, so we said I worked for a company that broke down, worked for a client, didn't like it, looked for other things, didn't like it, did freelance work for a while. I was a project manager at that point, and I specialized in media projects. So I would be headhunted to build a project, and then I would source my team, and mostly from people I knew, to do this thing. At that point, we started thinking it's time for us to do something on our own, instead of building other people's projects, maybe something for ourselves. And we spent 6 months trying to think of an idea. Everything we'd think of was not feasible, done a million times before, like that. Until my sister-in-law at the time announced that she was pregnant. And for me, my parents are doctors. I'm bilingual. Information online is available in English. Because I come from a family of doctors, medical help would come anytime in the day or night through friends of friends. And it just made me realize that how privileged I am. So what about others? How do others learn about parenting? If the book What to Expect When You're Expecting, or Dr. Spock, or Baby Center were only available in English, the 60 million, I think 70 million at the time, Egyptians, how do they learn that? So I wanted to bring this information to them. And that's what started it.
Okay. And what is SuperMama exactly?
So SuperMama was an online parenting portal that provides information about everything from pre-pregnancy, like you want to get pregnant, up to the point where you set your kids up for marriage. Everything about parenting, education, health, taking care of a household. So it was a one-stop shop for mothers in terms of content. So we were a content creation machine. We had our own video production studio. So we created our own videos, both for us and for clients. We had our own team of momfluencers. And it was and we actually had 2 apps, one for pregnancy tracking and one for working up with your babies step by step in their first year. So it was a wonderful thing.
It seems like you have, your specialization is in content heavy kind of consumer businesses.
Content, consumer, and women.
Okay.
Although I did try e-commerce for my second startup, the one that didn't do very well, but I wouldn't blame lack of content for its failure.
So with SuperMama, how were you monetizing? Was it the same kind of?
Advertising.
Okay.
Advertising and white label deals. I would create content for others and get paid for it, but mostly advertising.
Okay, and you got to, I think you mentioned 6 million
Mothers monthly.
That's very impressive. How did you get to there? Like, how did you identify, again, your target market, where they are? How do you reach out to them? And then how did you scale up the way to 6 million?
We started with Egypt from 2011 to 2013. 2014, we entered the Saudi market and the UAE simultaneously. I think we did good research, but we also had an amazing content creation and marketing team. So we would. It's a 24/7 job. Like everybody, you need to know what people are talking about, what people are asking about, provide content in that thing in a way that is credible and easy. Because you have a lot of medical content out there, for example, but it's very difficult to understand. The marketing team needs to find the right channels, make sure that there's enough engagement, phrase things in certain ways for SEO and compatibility, push it in the right channels to make sure that it's reaching its intended audience. We get a lot of feedback, work on the feedback and send it forward. We actually had, I would say, an ambassador club at one point of women who were just super committed to SuperMama and SuperMama badges, and they would moderate the community, spread the word in their communities. It was a fantastic, and in a way, when you do something with intention and with purpose, I tend to believe that it has a life of its own and it has a blessing of its own and it grows on its own. I mean, yes, it is hard, but you are given an extra push by karma.
I want to just kind of take this conversation to a slightly other direction before coming back to SuperMama, because content is so important. And I think content is going to be increasingly important in people's personal lives, but also for businesses. And that's one of the reasons why I'm starting this podcast. And I wanted to know if you have any insights that you'd like to share about building content and content teams.
So oddly enough, in like 2010 to 2000 and maybe 14, content was king. And then there came a wave where content was dying because it was hardest to monetize. But then with the creator economy, so with podcast creators like yourself, with the real creators, with the user-generated content and all that, it's making a comeback in a different way that's more democratized. So think of it, in the past, media was telling certain 1 or 2, 3 outlets of media in every country was telling everyone what to do and what to think in a certain way. But now it's so democratized that anybody with a smartphone can film themselves and provide their content. So it's going to be, I think it's going to reach an organic growth and then eventually converge, where a few key speakers will be dominant and then there will be a few people targeting the long tail. So people that specialize in specific niches, there'll always be a place for them. Now it's video. In the past, it used to be written word. I remember in the in the mid 2010s, it was all about blogs. Bloggers made the living. Then came Twitter, and those bloggers then were asked to write books and become journalists. So now again, it's content creators, and it's the way to go. Whether this, and I think the smart person who knows how to monetize content or to make a living out of content is someone who involves their business side with their creative side. An example I give without mentioning names is the specific fashion influencer back in the Middle East, Egyptian origin, now lives in Dubai. While everybody else was happy getting paid per campaign, what she did was establish a company that manages her work. So while this created an overhead on brands, it gave her a platform to later add influencer management under her belt, because she owns a company and she kind of systemized the process. So I think if you're going to create content, definitely pick something that you're interested about and keen about and something that really touches you, that you'd be happy to talk about it for hours. But make sure that it's something monetizable, that's something that's potentially sponsorable or subscribable, or like you need to think of how to make money intentionally in the beginning and not keep it as an afterthought.
And how do you go about, especially when you're starting your businesses, how do you go about understanding what the broad topics that you want to discuss are? So let's say you have personal finance or you have pregnancy and fertility. How do you kind of break that down into the different subtopics, the different formats or mediums, the different channels? And then once you've done that, how do you build a team around systematizing that so you can pump out content regularly?
So I won't give you a formula, but I'll tell you what I did. So decided on Sharia compliant personal finance for women. I bought all the books about similar topics from all the regions that I found. So US, UK, I found some translated from German or from French as well. Unfortunately, didn't find in Arabic. So it highlighted the need. And then I reached out to my previous editor-in-chief in SuperMama, and she joined in as a freelance to try and help me break down the content into what you're mentioning, into the content map. And that took us maybe together like 4 or 5 days of breaking down into pieces. So that's deciding what to talk about. And then there's the decision of how to talk about it. So as I mentioned, to start, we were under the impression that we're talking to Gen Z who had very short attention span and need to do very short snippets of things. So we looked at breaking any topic into very small, many very small chunks, which we're now changing into longer chunks, but not as many. So, but depends on your audience. And then one good thing to do is test on sample audience. So even if I couldn't find Gen Z Saudi women in Cairo, at least I could test on Gen Z in Cairo or Saudi women in Cairo to start. And then I think from there, deciding on the channel. We knew it needed to be an app because, I mean, everybody has a phone now. This is how you spend your day. Web, useful, but less accessible. So that's why it was app. Which channels to promote through or to put content on in general? This is desk research. So what are the most popular channels in each country? For example, in Saudi, TikTok was number 1 for my audience. Then number 2 was Instagram. Number 3 was Snap. But I knew that to start, I don't have the capability to create that many reels for TikTok. So I intentionally forwent the first top medium and went for the second, because that's something I can do first. But right now we're trying to expand and enter that realm because I have a bigger team, things can work faster. But it's desk research, like, how do I reach the people that I'm trying to reach, I guess? And how do you build a team? So with Dija, I recruited many of my old team members, but for SuperMama, what we did, and I think this is interesting, we actually asked for volunteers when we were bootstrapping. So we used social media to say that this is what we're building. We're building a parenting portal for mothers to support Arabic language because blah, 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 blah. And we send the message across, and we're looking for volunteers to help us write the content and research and so forth. So volunteers were not paid, but this is how we built a big chunk of our team, because these were people who were passionate about the topic and had skills to write it down. And from there, obviously, you filter out. Some people don't commit. Others aren't good. Not everybody's talented to create content. And actually, this is how I met the editor-in-chief, Rehab, for SuperMama, who later became my editor-in-chief in.
Okay. And you mentioned testing. So you test by social media platform, or how do you test exactly?
Sometimes ways you can hack it. Obviously, the formal method is go for a Nielsen-like company and have them test things for you. But the way to hack it is create a fake social media account and see if people commit, or invite users for a test and get them to read different things and tell you the one that they like versus the one that they don't, or kind of give people a lot of your content and try to see when they got bored by facial recognition and features and stuff like that. If you want to complicate things, you can build something which is not too complicated, because it's very easy to build websites and apps now using AI that has limited functionality to do A/B testing. So give people something and give people other things and see which is the best results, perhaps.
So moving back to SuperMama. SuperMama was acquired by Mawdou'. Could you just explain what Mawdou' is and how that initial meeting and how that transaction came about?
Sure. There's a lot of NDAs in that space, so I'll try to be as informative as possible. But basically, Mawdou' is a media conglomerate that owns multiple websites and platforms in the Middle East for content, and they work as a media machine because they own assets and everything. They can monetize bigger and better because of sheer volume. And at that point, they were on a shopping spree. So SuperMama was a decent acquisition, especially that we had the numbers to help them boost versus other smaller players who only had the content. How did that come about? I think in 2018, it was clear to us that content is no longer king. So we need to move from that to something else. It wasn't working very well for us. So we explicitly started looking for an exit. We spoke to a different company at that point, but the deal wasn't good. And then Mawdou', I think they heard that we were shopping and reached out, we connected, and the deal was made.
Okay. Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you.
What was the hardest thing in building SuperMama and exiting SuperMama?
So a very personal experience, but the hardest thing for SuperMama was actually I left SuperMama as the CEO and stayed on the board before we sold it for 3 years. So from 2016 to 2019, I was not involved in the day-to-day decisions. And the circumstances that led to that were the hardest, but basically dealing with the transition, moving beyond things. And I suspect this is the same for founders who actually exited and are giving away their company. It's a very difficult decision.
So you had some attachment to operating the business.
Yeah. Attachment or detachment, because at some point there is a point in time where you think I'm done with this, but you still have to go on, for example, to earn your equity or things like that.
I'd like to ask you some general startup advice.
Sure.
Given your involvement with Oxford Said Business School. Firstly, could you just mention briefly what you do at Oxford exactly?
So Said Business School, in the University of Oxford, they have something called the Entrepreneurship Center, and they recruit a number of entrepreneurship experts, whether ex-entrepreneurs, VCs, lawyers that support in that field, or so forth, to be available as a sound of reason to the students or anyone involved with the university building entrepreneurship ventures. So the first year I joined there I was mentoring one project team outside the university, so part of the Oxford ecosystem, but not necessarily a student at the MBA. And I sat on panels like Dragon's Den and Shark Tank, where the end of any entrepreneurship project, which is was a core subject for MBA students, is that they actually pitched their startup in front of a Dragon's Den. The next year, I became a tutor. So I become assigned 3 to 4 teams working on their entrepreneurship project from ideation up to the point where they pitch to others on the Dragon's Den. And then last year, I started giving guest lectures. So I give 2 guest lectures as part of the entrepreneurship project subject, which I also gave 3 days ago. One in customer development, so research, acquisition, and then retention, and one in business models. So I work with a lot of students. Student groups, both MBA and sometimes EMBA, and it's a wonderful experience, to be honest.
That's amazing. How do you balance your time between entrepreneurship, or is there like a lot of overlapping kind of synergies you benefit from these
Of course,
interactions?
there are synergies. You meet the most amazing people, right? Like how you and I connected through London Business School. I mean, it's very interesting. I think time management is an art, not a science. But I try to only commit to things when I knew I can do them. So, for example, I never commit to anything in September. I know September is always, for example, peak season, because these are where the conferences happen that I need to be involved in. Some days you get no sleep because you have a lot to do, and some days you're good. But I think the benefits of staying with Said is way outweigh the dropping it for time.
Okay. So in your experience with your involvement at Said Business School, what's the biggest gap in the founder education or skills that you see within the people you mentor at Oxford and perhaps as well in the Middle East?
I think the key gap is the persistence and perseverance, because I think, especially with Said Business School, many of the students have been in consulting or in banking or in stable jobs, and they're just trying startups. They've been used to a secure setup with a process clear. And with startups, there's so much ambiguity, and you can do everything right, but still something hits and you have to fight all over. So it's the ability to persevere beyond that and not give up to the first amazing job offer you get. That's in terms of saying. For Arab founders or in the Middle East, I think commitment. What I'm noticing recently, it differs per country, but what I'm noticing recently a lot is that people do things on the side, throwing money at it, but not their time. And in my humble opinion, or in my school of thought, I think you really need to be full on something for it to work. That said, I've seen situations where when things worked for founders who were part-time, and then they had to leave their full-time job and take this full-time. But my advice would be full-time and persevere.
From the very beginning, or do you think there's like a bit of traction that maybe you could see, or a certain level of build out of your product before you actually take that leap of faith?
So depends. I am the type that quit everything so you have a clear head before you do it. That's what I've done every single time, but it works differently for different people.
So that being said, before you start a business, what do you suggest people do? Like, what would you do in terms of identifying your customers, identifying the problem, thinking about how you're going to solve that problem?
I genuinely suggest if they had no experience starting a company in the past, or being close to someone who had started a company in the past. Because I've seen, for example, a lot of husbands or wives now do it. They've sort of had the experience by being with their spouse, right? If you genuinely had no experience and you're very keen on it, try one of the accelerator programs, either offered by universities or by businesses, things like Antler or Zinc or whatever, because they help you get into the process. You can do it on your own, but it requires a lot of discipline. It requires a lot of time, put in research and interviews and refining your idea and not being jaded. Because a lot of the times you fall in love with your idea so much that you don't see the red flags when they're waved at you. So if you're able to objectively go through it, adopting feedback, not getting offended when someone tells you it won't work and so forth, then do it on your own. Perhaps one last advice I have to say to someone who wants to start a business is be sure you have at least a year's worth of expenses saved. because it really drags. You'd think I'd raise my angel round in 6 months. You don't. So just bear that in mind.
Yeah, that's actually very good practical advice. You mentioned red flags. How do you know whether an idea is worth pursuing, and how do you know when it's time to basically
Let
give
it
up
go.
on the
Let it
idea?
go.
Yeah.
I think letting go is one of the harder decisions. So, for example, one of my hardest decisions in my professional career was letting go of Kushi's, the second startup in the middle. We're hitting a brick wall. It was just time. How do you know when the numbers are not adding up? The unit economics need to make sense. Even if they don't make sense now, they need to make sense long term. You need a point where you can say, I will break even at this point, and this is how much revenue I can make per customer. So look at the unit economics, not the big picture, because things tend to be shiny when bulked, but when you break them down to the units, it's becoming more difficult. So I think this is where it lies. Also, red flags about a crowded market without you having anything special, or an uncharted territory, sometimes mean changing consumer behavior, and that is a very big thing. If it is like a lot of startups, for example, in femtech struggle with culture, that's a war. Are you ready to go to war for that? If your answer is yes, then go for it.
Assuming someone already decided that they want to pursue an idea, the market seems like it's a pretty good market. There's a problem that needs to be addressed. How shall they think about building the MVP? What is an MVP to you exactly?
Okay, that's a very good question. MVP, MVP stands for minimum viable product, but I think we're not talking about the name. To me, you go in and say, what are the assumptions that if the answer is no, then you don't continue. And those assumptions, they have like 3 questions or 4 questions or 5 questions. 5 questions you need to ask in order to discard no and build something the simplest possible to answer these 5 questions. Now, mind you, in the past, you could get away with a deck to test a concept. Today, it's a more competitive world. You kind of need to look good, but then again, you can build things faster. It doesn't have to be full functionality, but you could literally build a website in a day. And my suggestion always is don't do it alone. Solo founders, way to go. But I tend to feel that having someone to lean on and someone that leans on you and complements your skills takes you a long way, takes you places. So how do you go about building the MVP? You work with your team, ideally your co-founders, and as what I think, you write down the 5 questions you need answering. Like, for example, the first question for Dija would be, are women interested in financial empowerment in the first place? Because if the answer is no to that, no matter any questions or hypotheses that you answer afterwards, or if you build amazing products, if there is no interest, then what are we doing here?
Yeah.
Once we have that, maybe the next question is, would they pay for financial education? And the answer to that was no, they wouldn't pay for financial education, but they're interested in financial empowerment. So this is why you have to find another business model. So it's a series of questions that you ask one by one.
So the reason why I asked what MVP is for you exactly is because I've spoken to several people, and for them it's different. So for one person, it might be, like you mentioned, a deck. For another person, I think Google Ventures has this very interesting way of doing it where they have 3 landing pages and they just start talking to potential customers about these different landing pages with different features to understand what they're supposed to build first. And for other people, it's the actual product, but it's only one feature. So I guess there are many ways to approach it, and some are more expensive than others, but that's what I wanted to know, how you think about it.
100%.
And in terms of acquiring customers and getting that first traction channel, how do you determine that?
So I think this goes perhaps to, who are your customers? Are you B2B or B2C? And B2B is business development and sales work. B2B is online or digital, perhaps, or even in-person work, but then consider retail as well. So you go around getting your first set of customers, or first cohort of test users, or the first batch. One way to do it, the easy way to do it, is people who know people who know people, right? The whole 6 degrees of connection. Everybody's connected to that. So if you, for example, want 10 businesses of X size in X location and so forth in the UK, then I'd reach out to every person I know in the UK that's a small business of that size that work in that domain. And eventually I'll find the 10 of them that perhaps I'd want to give them the products for free. So they give me feedback.
Okay.
So it really depends, but the easiest way is connections. The most expensive way is paying for them.
Yeah, so maybe you would basically have a very personalized approach at first, one-to-one or one-to-many, and then through that you'll understand which channels you can kind of grow your business with, right? So like I think with Dija you mentioned Instagram is probably something that it's popular, but it also suits your current
audience.
Exactly. Okay. In terms of the Middle East venture ecosystem, things are changing very quickly in the Middle East, specifically in Saudi. I think if you look at how things have changed from 2018 to now, it's just like night and day. How do you see that change evolving over time, and how has it really impacted early stage startups in the Middle East?
I think we're at the stage where there's no turning back, right? The regulations have been set, the ecosystem has been built, government support is immense, to be honest. And the aim is to reach a certain number of companies and a certain number of unicorns by a certain date. So, I mean, these are very concrete requirements by the government. Hence, their support for the ecosystem is amazing. How does this affect you as a startup? Well, actually, it makes incorporation and establishing in Saudi so much easier than it was pre 2018, like you mentioned. And it is competing with establishing in other places in the Middle East, like AGGM, Abu Dhabi, for example. So you need, now you're giving a choice where you want to start. There is what I found amazing in Saudi and why I personally chose to focus on that market. Some of the reasons why I chose to focus on that market was on average, there is disposable income. So if you're working with consumers, there is disposable income, there is potential for investing, there is and there. And it's a large population. So let's compare it to its two neighbors. Egypt, large population, but no disposable income because of the economic situation. UAE, disposable income, but very small population. So really, I find Saudi fascinating in terms of having the right mix of opportunity and cost, but like from a business sense and from a financial sense as well, and government support. How will that play out over the years? I think everybody's trying to move there now. I think the government will eventually tighten the requirements for startups to move there or to establish there a little, just to organize things. But we are not at that point yet. However, I am not a macroeconomic or politics person, so this is outside of my scope.
Yeah, no, I'm curious to know your perspective as an entrepreneur. What are some of the big funding challenges you see for startups in the region as a whole? And I didn't ask you this, but were you bootstrapped for both of your ventures, or are you raising money?
So for SuperMama, we bootstrapped for maybe a year and a half, and then we raised venture money. For Kushi's, the middle venture, we were bootstrapped, and then we got some friends and family money in. And then with Dija, we got in some family and friends very early on because, again, it's a heavy operation. Like you have the content creation, the marketing, the tech creation, and so forth. But personally, me and my co-founder were bootstrapping for a little over a year, up until we finally started raising our pre-seed round. So we're starting to raise our pre-seed round now. How is the funding situation? Well, it's very challenging, but this is not just in the region, it's worldwide. I was talking with a few friends who are on their second or third startup now, who have started around the same time I started SuperMama. And we're joking that we're getting the worst of both worlds. So in the beginning, nobody knew what we were talking about when we said startups. So there are no angels, no ecosystem support, nothing. And then there was a boom where everybody became an angel investor and wanted to throw money in startups. Venture funds were everywhere. And even support from things like USAID and Danish companies. So there was a lot of money at some point in the middle. And then now we're at the point where the whole world is suffering economically. So even The venture funds are struggling to raise money for their funds. So accordingly, they're being very harsh and very specific on the startups. And what was accepted to a pre-seed stage in the past is no longer accepted. So traditionally, you'd go for a pre-seed, meaning that you have an idea, you have not yet built an MVP and you have no traction, but you have something built that you've tested with users. Now, raising pre-seed, people are expecting you to have revenue. So it's becoming very challenging and demanding. So it's not easy, but nothing is, right?
As an entrepreneur, what do you wish MENA-based investors did differently so that the ecosystem could be much stronger and more sustainable?
I think take more risks. The reason Silicon Valley became Silicon Valley, it's the only place where this is true, and it's hence is why everybody's trying to copy that model, is because people were happy to take risks. They didn't ask you to, sign your soul to the devil in order to give you some cash, and little cash. Like, people will give you $5,000 and expect you to sell your soul to them, and it doesn't work this way.
Well, I like to end off the podcast with like rapid fire questions, which are a bit random and kind of short.
Go for it.
What's one habit, routine, or mindset that has significantly improved your productivity?
Okay, so that one is actually LBS related. So while I was doing my MBA, I was also working on a startup. So I learned to appreciate the value of time. Prior to that point, my quantum was 1 hour. So anything could happen in 1 hour or more. Anything less than 1 hour is wasted time. But because I was struggling for time, I reduced my quantum to be 15 minutes. So 15 minutes, if something can fit in 15 minutes, then it's done. If it's less than 15 minutes, then it's wasted time. So I think go for a shorter quantum of time.
Interesting. So do you like time box, or is that something you do?
As much as I can, but it's like, I think it's a mindset shift. It's the shift of saying you got chunks of 15 minutes versus chunks of 1 hour.
What is one of the biggest failures that you've experienced that later set you up for success?
Cushies, I guess, if we can say that at any point I'm in success now. But cushies, the fact that it didn't make it, it's painful. But I learned a lot.
What did you learn out of curiosity?
I learned when not to go out of my depth. I learned where to draw the line between things I can learn, how to value what I can learn and what I shouldn't learn. Because there is no way to be good at, like, the failure came at deciding to take it from an e-commerce to an in-person store. I have no idea about retail, so that was going out of my depth.
If you lost everything and had to rebuild it from scratch, what's the first thing you would do?
Cry for a few days. Is that allowed? Like, yeah, I'd probably take a couple of days feeling sorry for myself, and then back to the drawing board, I guess.
What's one piece of common business advice you disagree with?
Glorification of entrepreneurship. This whole campaign of you will rest when you die and wake up at 5 and sleep at midnight so that you get work done, and struggle is good, and this whole campaign of making struggles feel glorious, and the idea that you're a martyr for business is a good thing. I totally disagree with that. I think you should put yourself first. You should take care of yourself. The quality of your decisions depend on the rest and on your health and on your well-being. And as a founder, then this is something that you are measured on, the quality of your decisions. So this whole drama of glorifying and mortifying struggle and stress is just, I'm so against it.
What is the one book that you have recommended the most or gifted the most?
The 100-Year Life. So it's actually by 2 university professors at LBS. It was launching the day we graduated, the week of our graduation. And it talks about that people born in after the year 2000 are going to live to be 100 years old, and how that changes what we understand typically about education, employment, and retirement, and how we view things, and how life is still built on the models that were placed in the 50s and the 60s, which are no longer applicable today. It's fascinating. I highly recommend everyone reads it.
Last question is, what is your favorite cuisine and restaurant? And since I'm in London, I'll benefit from this question. So the restaurant can be London-based.
Okay. So I'm a very picky eater, so I'm the worst person you should ask this question. But if we're recommending cuisine, I think Italian works well because nobody doesn't eat pizza. I hardly met anyone that doesn't eat pizza. But if you're going for a London recommendation, I'm going to recommend a very expensive restaurant. It's the best restaurant I've tried, and it's called Kai in Mayfair. It's a Michelin star. So
Thank you. Thank you for your time and thank you for your recommendations. If anybody wanted to connect with you or with or find more information about Dija, how can they do that?
So Dija.money, a website. There's contacts forms and so forth. If someone wants to get in touch with me, LinkedIn is the best. I try my very best to answer the majority of everything I get, but be specific so that I can get back to you.
Thank you so much for your time, Yasmine. I appreciate it.
Thank you.